Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things dog pound LGB on the LOB. Your host, Garrett Bush and Jeff Lloyd, along for the daily ride. Appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen wherever you get your podcast app, your podcast. Make sure you are following, subscribe to the Locked On Browns podcast. YouTube, check out the Locked On Browns page. We were shooting for 300 subscribers yesterday. We're in the 270s. Help us out there, folks. Continue. Again, I understand some of you aren't going to make the transition on over. I get it. You listen while you commute, while you drive. The last thing you need is to have a reason to look down at the beautiful faces of Garrett Bush and Jeff Lloyd. We don't want you getting in any trouble while you're doing your commutes. So if you're going to stay audio, stay audio. But please just hit the subscribe button over here. Plus, you'll get shorter videos and stuff like this with news breaks, stuff like that from me and Garrett. So always something to keep in mind in that avenue. Yesterday, we went in depth on pass rushers in the AFC North. This is going to continue to be part of some segments here, some shows we do over, obviously typical offseason type of stuff. We're going to talk a little bit about the wide receiver position in the AFC North. We're going to get into a top four breakdown there. We'll go through, 4 and 3. We'll go through the top two. There's some agreement here. This one, we're not going to get definitely a debate like we got yesterday about TJ Watt versus Myles Garrett. Then we're going to get to maybe where the standing of Amari Cooper is as far as, what has been the top dog at the wide receiver for the Cleveland Browns, basically since it came back in 1999. So, Garrett, without further ado, we're going to kick into this here. The top four, similar to yesterday, there is a team represented twice within this top four. There is a team not represented at this position. There is at least a Cleveland Brown on it. So let's get rolling.
Yeah, when you look at it, a disclaimer, you'll figure out this really quickly. There is a team that we don't have any on there, and I think it's obvious who that team is. When you look at and you start at number 4, I remember we had this guy flip-flopped or two guys flip-flopped. But Dionte Johnson, he's a guy from the Pittsburgh Steelers who I think for the last 2 years, Pittsburgh seems to do a decent job at finding guys of the same ilk. You had Antonio Brown. You had some of those guys like that. You've had Juju Smith-Schuster. Even going back to other guys like Santonio Holmes, the Steelers always try to find one of these guys where you say, wow, who is this guy? And, you look up, he has 1,100 yards, 80-something catches. So I think Dionte Johnson is a guy that would be higher on this list if he could catch the football. We all know that that's the main prerequisite for being a receiver. And, yes, he's a good young receiver, but he could even be a better receiver if he would catch the routine passes. So for me, you look at him and you look at what they have this year. Chase Claypool is on the other side of him. They got George Pickens. They got him from Georgia. So they have a solid roster of receivers. He's a guy who I think is the best out of those guys. I think Chase Claypool could have the most upside of anybody due to his size, strength, speed, straight line speed. But for me, Johnson is a guy who head and shoulders is probably their best receiver. However, when you look at his production is awesome. Production is great. It's just the balls you should catch on third down. It's the balls that you drop 2-3 in a row. And that's what's kind of keeping him down at number 4 on this list.
Well, when we talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers, obviously there's going to be a major transition here from, going from Ben Roethlisberger all these years to most likely, obviously, I think everybody believes it's going to be Kenny Pickett and it's just going to be handed to Kenny Pickett with, the way the AFC North is. The Steelers are not in a position where they can say, oh, well, we think maybe Kenny Pickett's going to be really ready next year. This is a division built, for now, and they're going to have to do everything they can to compete in it. It's always been like this, gradual step up with the Steelers wide receivers. Juju, the smaller guy in the slot, and then all of a sudden became much more of a bigger role. Then Dionte Johnson, after Juju kind of became the man, he was the guy here. But you look at what the Steelers did by adding George Pickens. Basically what you're saying is we think, we're going to challenge vertically, but if we can't get there, Dionte Johnson has done a great job out of the slot running crossing routes, for many years now. The consistency at time has been there as far as dropping balls. Certainly some back-breaking drops at times, a 3rd and 3, which could have put you in a field goal range, but now all of a sudden you're punting, those types of things. The potential, the athleticism, the yards after a catch ability, it's always been there with a player like Johnson. But with the Browns situation, obviously, and similar to Pittsburgh, there's going to be a whole bunch of people learning new people as far as the passing game. So, there's concerns there. You can't automatically assume it's just going to work. Maybe Pickett will find more success vertically, which makes Johnson maybe a little bit more of an afterthought. But Dionte Johnson, worthy of being on this list. But for me, the three we have on top, we're talking about true potential number one wide receivers.
Yeah, no doubt. You look at his production is there. I mean, he has 107 catches, over 1,100 yards, and 8 touchdowns. So the production is there, especially with 107 catches. That could be a little bit higher. And I think the only reason he's a little bit lower on this list is because of the drops. Moving at 3, we had Tee Higgins. 74 receptions, 1,091 yards, 6 touchdowns. And some people might have a little issue with Tee Higgins flip-flopping with Dionte Johnson. But the reason that we have Tee Higgins here is because he's a guy who has the size, 6'4", 216. He's a guy who does not drop the ball in some of the same ways Dionte Johnson does. And Tee Higgins, if at 23 years old, if it was on another roster, he would be a guy that would be potentially a number one, target. He obviously is playing with Jamar Chase. He's playing with Joe Burrow. And I think that really elevates his stats a little bit too, because Joe Burrow is an elite quarterback. And then Jamar Chase is obviously, I would say, probably the best receiver in the league right now, or not one, maybe 2, 3, somewhere in that range. But Tee Higgins, to me, size, can get vertical, go up and make tough catches. He's a guy who does not have that many drops. And I think if you look at his numbers, he's come into the league and pretty much produced. Even in 2020, he had 67 receptions, 908 yards, and 6 touchdowns. That's almost 1,000 yards by itself in 2020 as a rookie. So when you look at that, I really put Tee Higgins in that spectrum at a 3rd. I wouldn't be mad if somebody said Dionte Johnson is ahead of him, but I definitely think Tee Higgins is on this list.
The thing with Tee Higgins, and you saw it in the playoffs last year, where teams were just saying, you know what, we see what this Burrow-Chase relationship is, and, we're going to throw everything at it and, make you at least beat us another way. Obviously, we saw how that turned out with the Bengals making it to the Super Bowl. Tee Higgins with 67 receptions in 2020, keeping in mind Joe Burrow was out for more than half the year with a torn ACL. So he was not playing, obviously, with the guy that they were drafted together. There was no guarantees of, Jamar Chase was going to be a player that they could acquire in 2021, who Burrow obviously had this strong relationship with. The size is a difference maker. If Jamar Chase wasn't a Cincinnati Bengal, there's a very good chance we could be talking about Tee Higgins as the number one wide receiver in the AFC North. Has the potential, has the size, knows how to use it, great at the contested catches. He's kind of in a tough spot here because, once Jamar Chase came in, there's, what he has obviously built a rapport and a relationship with Joe Burrow. But you're talking about a relationship between Burrow and Chase that's gone on, a couple of years longer. The insane amount of success that they had in the ACC during that national championship run with LSU. So for Higgins, it's in a tough spot. I mean, he's going to eat, he's going to get his numbers, he's going to be well fed. But certainly a player production wise that we could be talking about closer to 100 reception, maybe 1,400 yards, double-digit touchdowns. If he were in the position where he could be the number one guy for Joe Burrow, I'm assuming those numbers are going to go up this year. The NFL is, what have you done for me lately? Jamar Chase killed everybody. So guess what? Jamar Chase is going to be double, maybe if not triple at times, until teams can, prove, until the Bengals can prove consistently they can win with their passing game in other ways. So there we have it. Obviously, 4th, Dionte Johnson from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Number 3, Tee Higgins from the Cincinnati Bengals. And for Tee Higgins, the one thing is maybe just an asterisk. I mean, it's a tough spot for him here because he could easily be in consideration to be higher up on this list. But Jamar Chase is going to command and consistently get over 100, He's going to get 100 opportunities, passes thrown his way, probably closer to 125, maybe even 130 target-wise for Jamar Chase, which makes it a little bit tougher for a player like Tee Higgins to find his way. Your host, Garrett Bush, Jeff Lloyd, rolling through here your latest Locked On Browns, obviously getting into some wide receiver debates within the division. We're going to get to the top two that we think are in the AFC North. We're going to close it out with as far as where we feel Amari Cooper stands coming into this versus where every other top wide receiver essentially, has been viewed from 99 to 2002. For me, most likely it's going to be 2017 on. So we'll let G Bush, wax a little, bring up some names of yesteryear as we go on through this, continuing here on your Locked On Browns. Built Bar, guys, they are always at it. They are always up to something. I love brownies. But you know what I love more? Brownie batter. Sometimes I eat half the batter just while I'm making the brownies. I'm kidding. When Mrs. Lloyd is making the brownies. Imagine if you could lick that brownie spatula clean and get some protein in. You're in luck because Built has a new creation, and this one is better than ever. The Brownie Batter Puff. You heard me right. This puff takes protein bars to a whole new level, and they are available right now on Built.com. Have you tried the Built Puffs yet? I'm not sure what you're waiting for. Puffs are a chocolate-covered marshmallow protein bar. That's right. Delicious flavored marshmallows covered in 100% real chocolate. With 140 calories, 17 grams of protein, and only 7 grams of sugar, Brownie Batter Puffs are the perfect pick-me-up for any day. All Built Puffs are covered in 100% real chocolate. That means that with Built, you can eat healthy and actually enjoy doing it. And they are made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. The Brownie Batter Puffs will have you completely forgetting that you are eating a normal protein bar. No need to pinch yourself. This is real life. Go to Built.com to get Brownie Batter Puffs now. Go to Built.com. Use the promo code LOCK15, all caps, no space, and get 15% off your order. Again, LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. So continuing through, and I will kick it over here to Mr. G. Bush. We'll get his thoughts here. Top two wide receivers in the AFC North. It is a battle of Ohio. Is it too early for the youngster to be deemed the king of the wide receiver position in the AFC North? Are there some factors to understand with Amari Cooper, with a transition? Maybe possibly, not sure just exactly who his quarterback will be as far as portions of the 2022 NFL season. What you got, Mr. Bush? Let's go.
Well, coming in number two, we got Amari Cooper. So you look at Amari Cooper and what he's done traditionally. Last year, 68 receptions, 865 yards, 8 touchdowns. However, you had Michael Gallup there. You had CeeDee Lamb there as well. So those are guys that are and you had Zeke Elliott in the backfield who can catch the ball out of the backfield on screens and things like that. Numbers a little down, under 1,000 yards for the first time in a couple of years. But when you talk about traditionally what he's done, 2020, 92 catches, 1,114 yards, 6 touchdowns. You go back to 2019, 1,189 yards, 79 receptions, 8 touchdowns. So traditionally, this guy is usually always somewhere between the 80 and 90 catch range and hovering usually around, a little bit over 1,100 yards and averaging maybe 5 to 6 touchdowns every single year since he's been in the league. So for me, I look at this and say, what is the potential with Deshaun Watson when he gets back and ready to play? And his potential goes up a ton because of a couple things. I think you put him here because Deshaun Watson is going to actually elevate his game, make him better. You're going to have a running game that you're going to lean on, play action. He's going to be open. And I look at his skill set, and he can run any single route. He can run every single route in the route tree. He's a guy that's, is physical, can high point the ball, runs solid routes. And I just think when you project and look at him, some people will say, well, how can you put a guy at number 2 with 165 yards? Well, if you look at what he's traditionally done and you kind of project what he's going to do with Deshaun Watson, I think it's a safe pick to put him at number 2 as the second best receiver in this division.
Of course, the Browns with, what as the rest of the offseason went on, looks like a steal now. They were comfortable with the salary. The Cowboys weren't. The Browns gave up a 5th-round pick. You saw what other top wide receivers went for. Crazy year as far as the wide receiver movement, and obviously the trades involved. Devontae Adams, AJ Brown during the draft. Numerous other Hollywood Brown. Amari comes in here, and maybe some of this obviously is speculation as he's coming in here to a new offense, a new system. It is third team now for Amari Cooper. Certainly some thoughts as he's made the progression from Oakland, Oakland playing in Oakland, obviously, to playing in Dallas, always playing in basically more friendly weather environments than he's going to play here in Cleveland. It's not like Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott isn't a solid quarterback. It's not like he didn't have a great relationship with Derek Carr. So he's still going to continue to get to play with good quarterback play if and when he ever gets to play with Deshaun Watson. The other thing, which for now, and this maybe could change for with a player like Tee Higgins, is there growth within the Browns wide receiver room? Does Donovan Peoples-Jones continue a progression of a getting better path with his career like he has? He was pretty good as a rookie for 6th-rounder, pretty good last year. Does he become more of a factor where it's time where you're going to give Donovan Peoples-Jones more looks? But I'm confident with him here for now. Great runner, route runner, good after the catch. Comes in here to Cleveland, a team desperate to have that top dog. And the thing with having Amari Cooper is he's not your typical number 1 wide receiver. He comes in, he plays, you don't hear much from him. And as I know Garrett has said before, he is very similar. He is kind of like Nick Chubb at the running back position. I come in, I do my job, and you don't get much else out of me. I will do my interviews that I have to do. You're not going to hear much from me from social media. You're not going to hear much about me, out on the town, this, that, and the other thing, that type of personality, more laid back guy, but certainly solid at what he does. And even with just 1 year in, up in Cincinnati, Garrett, it's easy to see what he did last year. And certainly the relationship with Joe Burrow assists him here. And hey, he ain't going to complain, and Joe Burrow ain't going to complain when they start signing big time long extensions in Cincinnati, because it worked out well for them. I was against the pick. It was never a question of whether or not Jamar Chase was a good enough player. It was about thinking about the fact that Joe Burrow was coming off of an ACL injury, and he was probably the most important thing to take care of by protecting that offensive line. Granted, they've done that going into year 3 for him, year 2 for Jamar Chase, but there is a top dog already in the AFC North, and it is Jamar Chase.
Couldn't agree more. Just go back and watch it. From get-go, he transformed the Cincinnati Bengals, and to me, he's just as much of as a reason that the Bengals got to the Super Bowl, just the same amount as with Joe Burrow. He gets a lot of credit with that, because what you're able to do with Jamar Chase now is different. When you got a guy that can catch a slant and go to the house in a blink of an eye, when you got a guy that you could just throw it up on the goal line, he can go get that, it makes your offense that much better. It now opens it up for Mixon. Now you're like, okay, well, Joe Mixon is not, a household name, but when you got guys like Tee Higgins and especially Jamar Chase on the outside, now you get a ball to Mixon, and he has running lanes. Now he has open space because all of the attention is on Jamar Chase. I think he really transformed the way we look at receivers in the league. And I think they value receivers at a point now. You wouldn't see the Dolphins go out and get a Tyreek Hill. You wouldn't see somebody pay $17 million for Christian Kirk. Those are things that people have done in response to how effective Jamar Chase is. And I definitely agree. He's head and shoulders above people in the AFC, and he's a lock for the number 1 receiver in the AFC North.
For me, one of the funniest things here is former LSU coach Les Miles once thought of Jamar Chase as he didn't think he was good enough to be a wide receiver. He wanted him to be a cornerback. It's probably why Les Miles only had 2 years down in Baton Rouge. But even the thing I think that was most shocking about Jamar Chase last year is there's a couple actually things to it. Is he didn't play his final year at LSU. He was one of the guys that chose to sit out because of COVID. For a wide receiver, it's a really, really difficult thing. I mean, obviously he trained well, and wherever he worked out, obviously they had him ready. But to take off an entire year, I mean, we've seen this type of stuff before, injury related, and how hard it is to come back. But for Chase, he was obviously healthy, got his workouts in, and if anybody remembers, there was some rumblings in August coming out of Bengals camp that Jamar Chase was maybe having some drop issues. And it was, kind of funny at the time. And it was like, oh, it's kind of interesting, something to note. Obviously, really, really high investment in him. And I think his week 1 performance was like 11 for 197 or somebody. He just absolutely trashed somebody. So whatever the rumblings were, hey, maybe some guys just don't practice as well as they play, and it ain't going to be the first time. It's most certainly not going to be the last time. With the Ravens, with nobody on this list, this has been, it's amazing. The Ravens have been so successful, obviously not last year, notwithstanding a lot of injuries for Lamar Jackson. But it's just the one thing they don't know how it works is wide receivers and Lamar Jackson. He plays really well with his tight ends. Obviously, the running backs involved in the passing game. Lamar's legs alone, all strengths of that offense. Rashad Bateman has the look of going to be a good one. Maybe he is such a complete receiver that they can kind of find a way to work with it. Work with, him with it where it becomes he looks like and maybe produces like what a number 1 wide receiver would. But as Rashad Bateman was getting integrated last year, it was a late start for him injury-wise. By the time he was fully ready to go and contribute, those games weren't quarterbacked by Lamar Jackson anymore. So, hard, obviously, to put Bateman on this list with much more established guys. Bateman, with a weird rookie year where he basically didn't get to play with the Ravens' number 1 quarterback. So we're confident, in our list with this here. Again, look, go ahead. Higgens could contend. Others could contend, but go ahead.
I'll throw this out there, too. Coming up in a few, we'll get to other positions. And the Ravens weren't really represented in this list, but they will be well represented in the tight ends list when that list comes out. So keep it locked. We'll get to that and see where they come up on the list as far as tight ends and pass catchers that are a little bit bigger than the wideouts.
No question about it. And the Ravens, there's gonna be some certain group rooms we get to, obviously, where the Ravens are going to be well represented. We are going to talk about where Amari Cooper stands here since the return of the Cleveland Browns, and maybe what are legit expectations for Amari Cooper here in his first year with the brown and orange. Our partners over at BetOnline continue to be the number 1 source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including the NBA playoffs, Major League Baseball, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs to esports and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Welcome back to the Locked On Browns podcast. Jeff Lloyd in the building, G. Bush in the building, talking a little bit about receivers. We went over the top 4 receivers in the AFC North. So make sure if you missed that, if you got to this point in the video, you skipped a little bit, go back and listen to that. I think you'll be entertained. But moving forward, we did mention Amari Cooper. He was on the list at number 2 as far as the guys in the AFC North. You look at it and you ask yourself, what is this guy the best receiver or one of the best receivers that the Browns have ever had? We went over his statistical data. All he seems to do is get about 85 to 90 catches a year, over 1,100 yards, 5 to 6 touchdowns a year. So where does that stand up in terms of in the history since 1999 of receivers we've had? And you go down some of these lists of names. These names don't really come out and just jump you and strike you in the face as these guys are great. You take a look at OBJ. OBJ was here. He only amassed 1,500 yards, 7 touchdowns while he was here as a Cleveland Brown. You go up and look. Quincy Morgan, named for the past. 2001 and 2004, he had over 2,000 yards. You think about it like this. Rashard Higgens was here from 2016 and 2021. He's 38th on the list in production. How crazy is that? He had 1,800 yards and 12 touchdowns. David Njoku, obviously, he's a tight end. He made the list. Named for them, Greg Little, 2011, 2014. You have guys like Josh Gordon, and we kind of talked about, we probably touched down on that again. Josh Gordon from 2012 to 2018. He had that one monster year, and you know what that was. But you look up through here, and Braylon Edwards is a guy that was on the list 2005 to 2009. He had one great year here. But you look at these names: Eric Metcalf, Jarvis Landry. So, and Kevin Johnson, 99 to 03. So when you look at it, for me, I say he definitely could be the best receiver that the Browns have ever brought in, and is the most decorated. Would I say he's the most talented? No. I would say Odell Beckham Jr. had more talent than him. I would say Josh Gordon definitely had more talent than him, because Josh Gordon had Hall of Fame talent. It's hard to kind of judge that. But as far as production, reliability, what he brings to the locker room, catching the football, just being a professional, and what he's done traditionally, I think Amari Cooper will probably be somewhere in the top three. And you could argue that he's the best receiver that they've had.
Coming into this discussion, now, this shouldn't even be a question. There should be multiple players that we should say he was not better than Braylon Edwards. He should not be, because keeping in mind, Amari's going to be Brown maybe legitimately 3-4 seasons. So he should never surpass Braylon Edwards. He should never pass Josh Gordon. If you want to get technical, he shouldn't be here right now if Odell Beckham Jr. was anything close to what the Browns thought they were getting when they got him. Certainly, the maneuverability and the turnover at the quarterback position is factored in here. There's no way you can't say, well, we never really got it right at wide receiver when that jersey exists that's got to be going down now to, 175 names at this point. So that certainly plays into this factor. Some of these guys, brought it on themselves. Josh Gordon, obviously, with, not being able to keep his life correct off the field. There is no question that we should be literally looking at Josh Gordon right now as, a guy that would be maybe nearing 1,000 receptions, 10,000 yards, close to 100 touchdowns. This was the potential that a player like Josh Gordon had. There are maybe, what is it? Maybe the 0.7% that had the speed, size, length package of Josh Gordon at 6'4", 220, the slap your mama, in the back of the head length arms, and just the true utter dominance. Certainly a shame the NFL got robbed of what could have been one of the greatest. I would say there was potential there for Josh Gordon to be, one of the top 25, one of the top 30 wide receivers that ever played in this league. So certainly, it'll always be a tough pill to swallow, certainly with that. But Amari Cooper, and again, for me, I think the thing that for me, Garrett, is he just comes in and it's just, okay, I'm going to do my business, this, that, and I'm going to go out, I'm going to run my routes. If I'm open, I get it. If not, as the team wins, as opposed to wide receivers. And look, I know, it advent in huddles, and, I've listened to wide receivers come back into the huddle. I was open, and, you hear the quote, it was a running play, dude. It was a running play, bro. What do you want me to do? They're not calling for us to throw it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man.
And you certainly, with 19, both of those guys, Odell, Jarvis, over 1,000 yards, unsuccessful season. And certainly that's what, gets everybody a little bit more fired up and a little bit more, yippy, so to speak, about what's going on the field. But it was just, there should be players who should have done more, Garrett, that we're not just saying that maybe Amari Cooper walks in here as, maybe the best wide receiver since 99, but it's certainly a conversation that is worthy, even though Amari Cooper has not taken a snap yet in a Cleveland Brown uniform.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think the Browns fans will be pleasantly surprised of what he brings to the table, especially if you get Deshaun Watson. I think you're really going to see a uptick in the way we run our routes, the way we do our things, the way we're more efficient down the field. I just think people are going to be really, excited about what he's going to bring to the table. And I'm just looking forward to seeing him in the Browns uniform along Deshaun Watson and some of the other new toys that we got for the offense.
And look, everybody knows, there were wide open routes last year, even some in 2020, that had a lot of yards after catch potential that maybe essentially weren't thrown. I mean, everybody's seen it. It's been broken down to death. So this offense has shown that they can create some big plays. And it's not 50 yards down the field. It's a 7-yard completion that led to maybe 25 yards after the catch. Something like that. Amari Cooper, should, be like, a chubby kid at a buffet. He should be able to go in there and eat all day on these types of things. You have the potential around him with David Njoku and Harrison Bryant with their receiving abilities. You think you know what Donovan can do. And of course, obviously, David Bell, Anthony Schwartz, some younger options that, should be able to be successful in other ways. But the opportunity for Amari Cooper to have a huge, huge year in year one. Of course, a lot of it tied to how much Deshaun Watson plays for the Browns. And I mean, that's going to be an asterisk forever until we have an answer. So, got to keep a little bit of tongue in cheek here with some of these things we're saying, because you're going to base this until we hear that Deshaun Watson is not going to be the starting quarterback for 17 games. So what we got to believe it is. Until we hear otherwise. So obviously with the talk, that's, with that mindset in mind. He is Garrett Bush. I am Jeff Lloyd, your host of Locked On Browns. We got to a ton here today covering the wide receiver position within the AFC North. Amari Cooper, the potential of what he could be for the Browns at the wide receiver position. Wherever you get your podcasts, first off, we appreciate you for making Locked On Browns your first listen. Make sure you follow, subscribe to the show, 5-star ratings, written reviews. Available now on YouTube. Smash away on that subscribe button. Help you guys out here. We busting it day in, day out. Garrett right now ain't got about 30 seconds to even sit down, wolf down his lunch. He's eating it behind the steering wheel of the car as he's going from gig to gig right now. He's a busy guy, so at least help us out with that. With that, this has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on the LOB. Let's go Browns.